Media critic Dan Kennedy, a regular on our Friday Beat the Press program, has been trying to figure out the future of local journalism ever since the great newspaper depression began almost a decade ago now. He thinks he might have found the answer. The New Haven Independent is an online local news site dedicated to coverage of all things New Haven. And it's the subject of Dan's new book, The Wired City, Reimagining Journalism and Civic Life in the Post-Newspaper Age. And Dan Kennedy is here. Dan, are you really convinced that the newspapers are going to drift away? We're not going to have the thing delivered at our doorsteps anymore?
Well, no, I don't think that we're going to see anything that drastic for some years to come. And in some places, things are in much better shape than other places. I mean, here in Boston, things are in considerably better shape than they are in Connecticut. But what we've seen in Connecticut is a place where the major papers have gone into bankruptcy.
Both the Hartford Courant and the New Haven
both
Register?
of them, yes. Although I think they're both out at the moment. At least New Haven is. And as a result, we've seen the New Haven Independent and a number of other online projects kind of rise up to do some of what the newspapers used to do.
You have this great anecdote that you tell in the beginning of the book that everybody will remember, because it involved a Yale University student, beautiful girl who was about to get married, Annie Lee. And tell what happened with the New Haven Independent.
Well, what was interesting about this is that the Independent tries hard not to spend too much time covering Yale, because the sense is that Yale gets plenty of coverage as it is. But you had this disappearance of this beautiful young student, Annie Lee, and Paul Bass, the publisher of the Independent, put up a very short notice, and then he wasn't working again for a couple of days because he doesn't work on Saturdays. He's a very observant Jew. And it's just getting worse and worse. And then finally, the Independent dove right into it and broke some stories, ended up getting a national following. And what happened was their readership went way up as a result of this. And after it was over, I mean, this was just the perfect scenario for them. Of course, their readership dropped again, but it didn't drop to the level it was before. It really ended up being a growth engine for them as a result.
I mean, the confluence of 1,000 things that we've been through many times before, the internet and everything else, has really contributed to the downfall of newspapers. But what's the business model for the New Haven Independent? I mean, it's nonprofit. How do they make any money?
Well, the business model is very similar to what it would be for public radio or public television. There's a combination of foundation grants, donations from rich people, some donations from readers. They get sponsorships from some of the local colleges and hospitals that get their advertisement on the website. And their costs are very low. I mean, this is where the online-only model really matters, because you're not paying for paper, you're not paying for distribution. So the costs are low. They are living kind of a hand-to-mouth existence in a way, but at the same time, almost all the money they raise is able to go into the journalism.
Okay. Is it free to sign on to?
Yes, it's completely free. You do get a screen thrown up in front of you asking for a donation, but if you say no, you can keep right on reading.
Now, have you found models? I know you focused on the New Haven Independent, but are there models like this in other communities that service, like a very specific, geographic area?
Well, you've got some major nonprofit news sites, of which the Independent is one. But there's one in San Diego, one in Minneapolis. There are some bigger regional ones, such as not Voice of Texas, the Texas Tribune. And then there are also a number of smaller sites that are for-profit. That's an even harder road to travel right now, which is why these sites tend to be smaller. But people are making that work too. I mean, there's one I take a especially close look at is the Batavian out in western New York. They've got like 145 ads on the site. It's remarkable. but it tends to be smaller than the nonprofit because it turns out to be, at least right now, it's easier to get money in some of the large chunks that a nonprofit can get it than to try to sell ads to 145 pizza shops and tattoo parlors.
Well, how would you compare this operation to something like our local patch? Is it because it's too diverse, it doesn't really service, I mean, it's hyper-local and all that, but the New Haven Independent really serves a metropolitan area. I mean, is that the difference?
Well, the big difference, I think, is that the patches, and I like Patch. We have a patch in our town, and I look at it a couple of times a week. But it is part of a national corporate strategy. And the people who work for Patch work incredibly hard. And, you know, it remains to be seen whether Patch is going to make it or not. There are always dire predictions about their business model not succeeding, although I must say they're still with us, so they must be doing something right. I think the main difference with the sites that I write about is that they're independent, locally owned, locally controlled, and I think that makes a difference to the way they serve the community and the way they cover the community.
Yeah. Do they pay a living wage? I mean, can people live off of this?
Yes, they do. I want to make that clear. The independent in particular, the people who work there, they're not getting rich, but, you know, most of us who went into this business never got rich. They're not making any financial sacrifice in terms of working for a newspaper of comparable size. It's roughly the same money, maybe even a little better.
Yeah, you just said something interesting about ownership and how important that is. What about the Globe? I mean, is that going to translate to that too? I mean, do people, do you think, want the local ownership back the way it was?
You know, the Globe is a very interesting case. I am a big believer in local ownership, but when I look at how the New York Times Company has run the Globe, which I think has been pretty well, I sometimes say, well, I guess we better be careful about what we wish for. I would love to see the Globe return to local ownership and have that stake in the community once again, but it's got to be the right local ownership, and we just don't know how that may play out.
Well, June 27th is the deadline. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but it's a deadline for application for sale, and then who reviews it?
Well, it's the New York Times Company, and the company has said they're not necessarily going to sell to the highest bidder. It will be some combination of the highest bidder, but also a responsible steward of the Globe. So it may be, maybe it'll be the second highest bidder. I don't know. But there's a lot of names floating around. The Taylors are back in the mix, as you may know. I guess the Kraft family has now pulled out, but who knows?
So, I mean, could the Boston Globe or the Boston Herald replicate what the New Haven Independent has done? Or is it too far down the road already? I mean, the Globe has these two things going, Boston.com, BostonGlobe.com. One is kind of a firewall, sort of a semi-firewall. The other one isn't.
Well, you know, Boston is probably too large an area to support something like the New Haven Independent. And, you know, the Globe is doing pretty well in some respects. We still have this vibrant second daily, the Herald. So this would not really be fertile ground to do something like the New Haven Independent. What you're really kind of looking for is what can step in when the traditional for-profit model has really failed. And although the New Haven Register is doing some very interesting things right now, nevertheless, they've gone through bankruptcy twice in the last 4 years, their parent company. So that obviously created a vacuum for something like the Independent to come in.
Right. Good work, Dan. Good journalism. Good, solid journalism.
Thank you.
Dan Kennedy's new book, The Wired City. Thanks so much, Dan.